Now that you've been through the testing process in staging or whatever you call your pre-production environment, it's finally time to deploy your model to production. So this is the part that we've been building up to in our entire MLOps pipeline. So from the very beginning, where we do our data ingestion and we run our ETL pipelines and we do the feature engineering and then we do the model training and then we do evaluation and finally testing, we've made it through all of those steps to get to this moment where we have our model artifact ready to go. Maybe we have our API updated with that new version, or we're ready to run our batch predictions or embed the model on that IoT device. So, whatever method you decide to use to get to production, now that we're past testing, we can finally put it there. And you'll notice that in a lot of MLOps pipelines that have more automation, so more mature MLOps pipelines, they'll usually have some kind of separate CI/CD pipeline or some set of conditions that change your CI/CD pipelines, maybe environment variables, or maybe it calls different endpoints or services when it's ready for production. So it still has that same CI/CD config, it's just slightly updated to match what you need for production versus your pre-production environment. So that's why it's important to take note between those differences between the environments, because you might have some like sandbox that you test your model in for your staging environment, and it doesn't have as many resources. So maybe you are using a CPU on staging versus a GPU on production just to save on those cloud costs. So maybe you're using some kind of third-party services, or you're connecting to GCP with different credentials based on the environment that you're deploying to. Any differences that you have between the environments, just make sure that you and the team and anyone else who will be interacting with this MLOps pipeline is aware of those differences. So have them documented somewhere. And I cannot stress this enough. When you're ready to deploy a new model to production, always have some kind of rollback or incident plan in place. Sometimes deploys just mess up. It might not be anything to do with the code. It could just be something wrong with the cloud provider, one of the services you're using, maybe some credentials didn't get updated. There are a number of reasons you might have a deploy that doesn't go correctly. So always, always, always have a rollback plan and an incident plan in place in case there are some issues that come up with this new deploy to production. So let's take a look at our CI/CD config one more time and start to note some of those changes that happen when we're ready to deploy to production. So one thing I want you to note is that this CI/CD pipeline only triggers when we merge to one of these two branches. So I'll go ahead and call this one staging so it's a little bit clearer, but if we merge to our master branch or the staging branch, it will trigger our build and deploy job, which will come through and set up our environment. And this is usually where you'll notice some of those differences between staging or develop and production. So if I come down into the command that we run, you'll notice down here we actually have an environment variable that we check to make sure we know which environment we're working with. So in this case, if we have a specific tag then we change the environment to production, or if we don't, then we use the environment for develop. So this is how you can start to update and customize your CI/CD config to handle a lot of different deployments to different environments.